Welcome to Mission 6, Lesson 1. We are on to Mission 6. Yes, this is exciting. And Mission 6, what we're going to be seeing is that we're going to be dealing with decimals in numbers and how those decimals relate to fractions. Okay, so decimals is really our topic of Mission 6, of all of our lessons in Mission 6. And so today, getting started for Lesson 1, our objective is to use metric measurement to model the decomposition of one whole into tenths. In other words, we're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at the tenths place in decimals today. And we want to get a firm understanding of the tenths place in decimals. So let's look at what those look like. So this would be an example of what a decimal number looks like, okay? So here we have 0, and then our decimal, which is basically like a period right there, or dot, and then our decimal number, which is right here, 1, so 0.1, okay? Now, what do each of these represent, okay? Our first number here, the 0, that represents our whole numbers, okay? So that's the whole number. Okay, so before the decimal, so the number to the left of the decimal, so decimal's here, the number to the left is the whole number. And then the number to the right, so this is our decimal, and then the number to the right of the decimal, immediately to the right, is what is going to be in the tenths place. So this first number is in the tenths place. Okay, so decimal, the number to the left is the whole number. The number immediately to the right is the tenths place. So let's take a look at some examples and how we translate fractions into decimals. So here I have 1/10, and then 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and we're just going to rewrite these as decimals. Okay, so 1/10 equals, we'd write it like this: 0 decimal 1. 1/10. Okay, it's in the tenths place. 1/10. 2/10 would be written like this: 0 decimal. I know my decimals are pretty sloppy right now, but that's just how it works on this touchscreen. 2. 3/10 would be, there's 0 wholes, decimal, 3/10. 4/10 would be, there's 0 wholes, decimal, 4/10. Do you see the pattern here? So if we keep going, 6/10, there's 0 wholes, decimal, 6/10. 7/10 would be 0 wholes, decimal, 7/10. 8/10 would be 0 wholes, decimal, 8/10. 9/10 would be 0 wholes, decimal, 9/10. So this first place to the right is the tenths place. So you just, whatever tenth it is, you just write it in that first place. Okay? So you can see here, 1/10 looks like that, 2/10 like that, 3/10, 4/10, 6/10. I guess I didn't give 5/10. I skipped 5/10. But what would 5/10 look like? It would be 0 decimal 5, and so on and so forth. Now, written like this, for instance, 6/10, this is still equal to the fraction 6/10. It's just another way of saying it. The metric system uses decimals. They don't use fractions. So this is another way of saying that. 8/10, for instance, written as a decimal, that's the same as the fraction form. It's just another way of saying it. And let's take a look. If we had 10/10, well, what would 10/10 equal as a decimal? Well, what does 10/10 equal? 10/10 equals 1 whole, right? It's equal to 1. So in this case, it would look like this: 1 whole, decimal, 0. There's 0 fraction, 0 decimal. There's just one hole. Today's lesson, you're just renaming these tenths in fraction form in decimal form. So you're renaming the tenths in fraction form to decimal form, just like such. So you just need to remember that this number immediately to the right, that first space after decimal, is the tenth place. And you go from there.